I'm very grateful to have so many of you ladies from the immigration rights advocacy group CASA talking with us today about a few immigration matters, chiefly among them temporary protected status that the Biden administration has extended to immigrants from certain countries. So before we get into the juice of the discussion, I'd like for each of you to take a moment to tell us who you are and introduce yourselves to our Black Women Unmuted audience.
My name is Ines, Dr. Ines Furume. I'm the communication specialist for African and Francophone here at CASA. And I am lead in communication on everything TPS for Cameroon and healthcare, everything related to African and Francophone in the CASA community.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm a Frimpong-Houser. I'm the legal director at CASA, originally born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. I've lived in the States for about 20 years now. As a legal director, I oversee the delivery and implementation of CASA's legal services, which include housing services, employment services, and of course, immigration legal services.
My name is Marie. French is my first language, so my English is on his way to be improved. I'm community organizer at CASA, and I'm from Cameroon, Central Africa. So I have been fighting for TPS for Cameroon since 2019. So I'm happy to join you and discuss with you.
Okay, thank you. And last but certainly not least.
Hello, my name is Nkeshi Free, and I am the new Deputy Comms Director for CASA. And I am serving today in this capacity as support and to, help answer any questions in terms of the communication work that's been done around the issue of TPS. And really just also to support my colleagues and our fabulous team.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm Sonya Ross, Editor-in-Chief of Black Women Unmuted, which seeks to cover what Black women are doing, thinking about, accomplishing in the political and civic realm. We love being able to amplify the voices of Black women as storytellers and experts on various issues. And I'm just very, very glad that you are with us today. So let's just jump right on into it, shall we? President Biden has extended temporary protected status to immigrants in this country, coming into this country from a set of countries. And I would just like to know from whichever of you would like to jump in first to talk about this, tell us what this means, each individual country that's affected, and whether or not it poses any sort of challenge getting those who may be eligible for this status to come in and claim it.
To clarify, temporary protected status has existed since about 1990 with the Immigration Act of 1990. So it is not a new form of status. It has existed for about the last 30 years or so. And throughout each presidency, throughout each administration, different countries have been designated for TPS. There are currently about 15 countries that have TPS, including Afghanistan, Cameroon, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Haiti, and the list goes on. The reason why, and I actually want to take a step back to even, kind of frame a little bit more why it is we're even talking about TPS, right? Within our United States immigration system, there are limited pathways for someone to gain lawful permanent residence and thus U.S. citizenship. And so for someone to gain lawful permanent residence, there are primarily one of three different avenues available. Either so the first one being a family petition filed by a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident for a limited category of family members, including like spouses, children, and in some cases, parents and brothers and sisters. A secondary mechanism being through employment, right? And when I say employment, people typically ears perk up and say, wait, so that means I can get a green card, right? Because I'm employed, I want to work. That is not the case. When you read the immigration statute, the language is very clear. Employment-based lawful permanent residence is reserved for people with, quote, like extraordinary abilities or exceptional abilities or skilled workers, priority workers, and similar language within the statute. So we're talking more like models, athletes, professors, people like that, not your, not necessarily talking about your everyday person. And then the third mechanism which we encounter a lot is people with some form of humanitarian issue. So we're talking about people seeking asylum. We're talking about victims of crime, victims of human trafficking. And so typically in order to gain lawful permanent residence, people are limited, right, to one of those three mechanisms, which is rare, right? Very few people will fall under one of those three mechanisms. And so within CASA, our fight really and truly is to expand the road to lawful permanent residence and ultimately U.S. citizenship. So that's what we continue to advocate for, but it is a long journey, right, with many twists and turns. And so as we continue to advocate for these expanded mechanisms, we also advocate for temporary measures, right, to allow our immigrant communities to still live free from fear of detention, live free from fear of deportation, to be able to work to support themselves, right? And so that's why we're even talking about temporary protected status, is because we have an immigration system that completely limits, right, who can qualify for permanent lawful status, okay? So now, in talking about TPS, TPS is a temporary immigration status that's granted by the Secretary of Homeland Security to nationals of certain specific countries, right, that are dealing with an ongoing armed conflict, an environmental disaster, or some other extraordinary and temporary condition. TPS, and the idea is that, the Secretary of Homeland Security recognizes that for one of those three reasons, nationals from those countries cannot safely return back to their home countries. And so the Secretary of Homeland Security has the authority to designate those countries for TPS, meaning that nationals of those countries who are in the United States for a certain period of time, and it's typically for 18 months, those nationals cannot be detained or deported for the sole reason that they're not here lawfully, okay? And so during that 18-month period that they have TPS, they cannot be detained, they cannot be deported based solely on their status, and they are also, during that period of designation, eligible for a work permit, and also eligible to apply for a travel document. And so the most recent TPS redesignation that we just had was for Cameroon, which was announced, I believe it was announced on October 6th of 2023. And that was a priority, that was a country that CASA has been, heavily advocating for, TPS for, not only the initial designation, which was received last year, 2022, but also the redesignation that we received just a few weeks ago. And I do want to step back. I know that I used some language that I might have to clarify, particularly talking about initial designations and redesignations, but I do want to step back to see whether someone else has something to add to that first.
Well, one question that I do have since you brought up Cameroon is, hey, let's just talk about Cameroon and give people an idea of what the people of Cameroon are up against, what matters most for them coming into this country, what they need protection from, and what your average native-born American can do to be supportive of what this particular set of immigrants need.
In short, Cameroon has been facing a lot of social and political turmoil there, with the different conflicts in I believe the northern region of Cameroon between the Anglophone and the Francophone side of Cameroon. I'm sure Marie Solange, who is from there, will give a first account of that situation. And being from Cameroon, when they come here, their hope is that they will not accumulate unlawful stay here in the US. As we all know, when you come to the US, you are given a certain numbers of like a timeline of how long you can stay here. With TPS, the advantage that is there is that they will not accumulate unlawful stay. And many of them, when they come here, the hope is not just for them to enjoy their moment here, but for them to be safe away from the killing that they've witnessed, the different arrests and separation with their family that some of them have faced when they were in Cameroon, and all those other injustices that I'm sure Marie will share when she will share her story.
Thank you, Dr. Furume. And Marie, please, by all means, give us an idea of the situation with immigrants from Cameroon.
Before Marie speaks, I want to ask her if she wants me to translate, if it's going to be better if she speaks in French and I translate. Marie, tu veux parler en français, comme ça c'est plus facile, et puis moi je traduis en anglais, ou bien tu veux parler en anglais?
Non, ça va, je vais parler en français, comme ça tu vas traduire pour avoir des mots exacts. I would like to speak in French so that I'll give the real word and she will translate because her English is better than mine. So, la situation du Cameroun qui est un peu particulière et qui nous a donné droit au TPS.
OK. Je peux traduire, comme ça on va ensemble. So the current situation in Cameroon is very particular, and that was even the ground upon which they were granted TPS.
C'est des luttes profondes qui sont liées au système d'indépendance, où il y a eu des accords politiques entre une partie du pays et une autre.
Okay,
Qui n'ont
so
pas été
those
respectés.
are okay. There is an in-depth fight that has been going on in Cameroon that has at the foundation the different agreements that happen between some political parties and a certain group in Cameroon, as I mentioned, between the Anglophone and the Francophone. So when those things were not, the needs were not met, the needs from those agreements were not met, that's where those things started.
Okay.
La seconde chose, c'est que nous avons un président dont certaines personnes n'ont jamais vu un nom, donc qui a plus de 50 ans d'existence au niveau dans la politique.
Okay. The second thing is that for several decades, about 50 years, they have never seen another president in power.
Donc, ça a créé un effet de revendication au niveau de la population qui veut que cet ancien président change et ces accords politiques qui n'ont pas été respectés.
Okay, and the fact that he's been in power for that long has caused so many civil to rise in riots and demand his departure, and also the fact that he did not respect what was said, and every agreement in politics is also the reason for which there is all those turmoil all around the country.
Et les revendications, que ce soit pour le premier problème ou le second problème, sont les résultats de maltraitance, de violence et de tueries.
So out of those two things that she named, those were the ground upon which all those civil arrests, all those threatening and all the turmoil that has been happening in Cameroon, those were the ground upon which these things started.
Now, if I ask a question here, how I guess intense is the migration out of Cameroon, and how many people should we realistically expect to come forward or come into the United States to take advantage of TPS, or how many are already here who might possibly be eligible for TPS because of this situation?
I think that's an AMA question, but I'm still going to ask it to Marie.
Okay.
Elle demande combien difficile c'est d'immigrer du Cameroun jusqu'ici, et il y a combien de personnes qui vont bénéficier de ce TPS-là si on doit compter ceux qui sont ici et ceux qui vont peut-être venir après.
Nous ne pouvons pas, ceux qui bénéficient déjà, c'est un nombre insuffisant par rapport à ceux qui sont là. Parce que comme la situation s'aggrave tous les jours, et c'est pourquoi il y a eu cette désignation-là et la demande de redésignation parce que ceux qui sont déjà là. Okay.
So she said that even the numbers of those that are eligible for, those that are quote unquote eligible for TPS for Cameroon is lower compared to the numbers of those that are being impacted by what is happening in Cameroon.
Donc,
okay.
ceux qui ont déjà le TPS, la peur, pourquoi tout le monde doit avoir le TPS, c'est qu'il y a la peur que si on doit être retourné au pays, c'est pour être tué. On n'est même pas sûr de sortir de l'aéroport.
And those that have been granted TPS and those that are also on their way here, their hope is that they don't get returned to Cameroon because their chance of survival is very minimal. They are risking to get arrested and even further being killed from the airport alone.
And I think it would be very important to understand, some of the words that I mentioned before, thinking personally about initial designations and redesignations. And so speaking specifically about Cameroon, when Cameroon was initially designated for TPS last year, one of the key requirements for TPS is that the nationals of the country must have been residing within the US by a certain date. So, for example, the initial TPS designation for Cameroon, and Marie, you might remember more than me, even though I can, look it up very quickly, what the cutoff date was. And so for anyone who entered the United States after that date, they were not eligible for TPS, right? And so that was a huge advocacy point for CASA in seeking to redesignate. And what a redesignation does is it puts forth a new residence date, okay, which opens up the number of people who are eligible to apply for TPS. For example, with this redesignation for Cameroon, which was October 5th, the new cutoff date or the new residency requirements date is October 5th, 2023. So what that means is people who were in the United States already before that date are now eligible for TPS, right? So anyone, you know, so if someone entered October 7th, they're not eligible for TPS, right? And so I think, you know, like that will continue to be an advocacy point because the government always has the option of simply extending the existing TPS rather than redesignating. And what extending it does is it limits the people who are eligible for TPS to that same initial cohort of people, right? So had the government not redesignated TPS this time around, there wouldn't have been new people eligible for it. And so it's currently estimated that in addition to the 2,000 or so Cameroonians who applied under the initial designation from June 2022. In addition to that number, it is estimated that there are currently about 8,000 additional Cameroonians who would become eligible for TPS under this redesignation, right? And another key thing to mention is that for a lot of our Cameroonian population, they're not only applying for TPS, they're also applying for asylum, right? Asylum is a status that does lead to lawful permanent residence and citizenship. Okay, so now the requirements for asylum are much more stringent, right? Are much higher to meet than for TPS. Asylum is a form of relief that's available to people who have suffered persecution in their home countries based on, you know, one or more specific protected grounds, right? And so we have a lot of Cameroonians who are not only eligible for TPS, but they're also eligible for asylum.
We're talking about 4 times as many people who could benefit from TPS, possibly as a bridge to asylum, or and how do you get that word out? Where are these communities concentrated? Where are these populations concentrated so that they can try to access the resources available to them? Anybody can.
Yeah. I hope Ines is there to translate.
Yes, I am.
I'm saying. Yeah. So, en fait, nous sommes partout dans le monde. Mais maintenant, la
We are
concentration.
everywhere in the world.
Okay.
Ici aux États-Unis, c'est là où nous pouvons avoir la possibilité d'être reçus, comme les informations s'échangent, comme la CASA existe pour encadrer les immigrants. On s'oriente beaucoup plus dans les États où la CASA se trouve pour bénéficier de leur assistance.
Okay, so she said that as far as where the Cameroonians are located, they are everywhere here in the US. But because CASA has been such a pillar in helping the Cameroonian community, most of the Cameroonians are going in states where CASA is located, because that's a first-hand help that they get for their needs. And one of the reasons for which they choose the US than other places is that because the US is a welcoming country for them.
Okay, so we're talking which particular states are CASA located in, so people will know, oh, that's my state, and maybe I should try to encourage Cameroonians, me, to take advantage of that.
Ines, if I can jump in really quickly, I just wanted to say that CASA is a national organization with members in about 46 states across the country. Primarily in terms of offices, we have an office in Atlanta. We have an office in Virginia. We have offices in Maryland, and we have 2 offices in Pennsylvania. And I also just want to clarify one more point, is that TPS is actually granted to a country, and asylum is granted to a person. So, so we just want to say, you know, so in that regards, it's not necessarily a bridge directly for asylum. And but I just wanted to clarify that. And again, just to let people know that in terms of locations, we are in Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, but we have members nationally across the country.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. And that was very interesting to me. I didn't know all of these things are going on with Cameroon, and I'm very glad to know it because it just helps me to get a better understanding of the relations between this really important African country and this country. Now, in terms of TPS, my question for Yandele is to give us an idea of how TPS matters for I guess, for folks from her country, in Honduras.
Sí, claro, por muchas razones. Por ejemplo, en nuestro país vino un huracán, se llamaba el huracán Mitch. Desde entonces, las personas empezaron a emigrar a este país. Inmigraron tantas personas por la razón que se perdieron cultivos, se perdieron casas, miles de familias. Entonces, por esta razón, optaron para venirse para este país.
For many reasons in our country, TPS is important. There was a hurricane that came to Honduras called Hurricane Mitch, and people started to have to leave the country because of the hurricane. Many crops were lost as a result of this natural disaster.
Por esa razón empezó la inmigración y el TPS vino como una ayuda para ellos, ya que gracias a eso ellos pudieron tener un derecho, podemos decirlo así, de tener un trabajo digno, de poder optar a diferentes tipos de empleos. Entonces, por eso pienso que realmente es importante el TPS para nosotros los hondureños.
For that reason, migration from Honduras started happening. TPS arrived as a help for them. It's almost like having a right to a dignified job, of having a job. That's why I think TPS is important for people from Honduras.
Okay, can we talk for just a moment? It just seems to me that we are getting to like the question of sanctuary cities as people flow into this country, and those efforts that have been underway to ship immigrants from states that are near the border, such as Texas or even Florida, sending them to the sanctuary cities in this country, busing them, flying them. I'm wondering how that impacts populations who may be able to benefit from TPS, so that they can work, can earn money to have a home wherever they have been deposited under this, I guess, transport of immigrants from border points to sanctuary cities. Alma, this may be a question for you, but anyone can feel free to address that.
Well, I just want to jump in really quickly and to start with the conversation and state that in terms of CASA and what we are doing here in this organization is that our campaign is for people who have been here for decades, and for people who have been here for decades without protections. And we want to make sure that the people who have been living here have the capacity to not only remain here under protections and to get the protections that they need, but as Alma has also stated, to ensure that they have the capacity and the capability to a pathway to citizenship. And we're talking about people who have, grandchildren here and children here, and that, yes, it is tragic that they are losing their dignity being bused from one place to another, but we have to remember the millions that have literally been here for many, many years and have built their lives and have built their families, and we're trying to ensure that they have the protections that they need. Alma, did you want to jump in and add anything?
Yes. So a couple of points, right? To follow up on what Jan Deli was sharing, specific to Honduras. It is a perfect example of the conversation that we were having earlier regarding the decision points that the government has to whether to redesignate a country for TPS or extend it or terminate it completely. Honduras is one such country. Honduras was initially designated for TPS in the late 90s. And so the residence requirement there, right, is for people who had been in the United States as of, I believe the date was December 30th, 1998. Since then, Honduras has not been redesignated for TPS, right? What that means is only people who were only Honduran nationals who were in the United States prior to that December 1998 date are eligible for TPS. That discounts, right, thousands of Hondurans who have been here since after that date, right? We're talking about how many years is that now? 30 years, 35 years or so, right? And so our campaign is to, continue to advocate for redesignation, not only for Honduras, but for other Central American countries who are still under that first designation date from the late 90s and early 2000s. These are community members who are, living here, working here. They are our neighbors. They are our, they are our community members, right? They are our community. And so we feel very strongly, right? We feel very strongly and we shout to the rooftops every single day, right? Like we need redesignation for those countries. And for those countries that I mentioned, on Honduras, El Salvador, Nepal, and Nicaragua, not only has TPS for those countries been extended, their re-registration dates are also ongoing. What that means is whenever a TPS is extended for a country, TPS holders from that country must re-register, right? Meaning they must reapply to maintain their TPS. And so for El Salvador, the re-registration period started on September 10th. For Honduras, it started, or Honduras and Nicaragua both will start on November 6th, and Nepal starts today, right? And so we also want to make sure that people know that they should be reapplying for their TPS and that, that they don't miss the re-registration periods.
I want to speak on the question of sanctuary that you just said. Not to dwell on that, but I wanted to say above the question of sanctuary, we have the question of people. If we can't just depend on sanctuaries, these are actual people, actual lives. So people should feel safe anywhere here in the US, whether it's a place that is welcoming them or not. They should feel safe to know that I've run away from the turmoil in my country, but I still found a place that I can call home here, a place that can give me a second chance. So it's about the dignity of people, and that's something that we should keep in the back of our minds.
Well, what can your average person do your average person who cares about what is happening in these countries, to the people who need TPS, to the people who need to be taken care of in sanctuary cities, and people who need really a better protection under the US law that is in bad shape right now? I mean, I think there's a new House bill, the Dignidad Act, designed to try to improve the performance of America's immigration apparatus, but with Congress stuck with no leadership, that legislation isn't going anywhere right now. So what can your average person do to advocate and help these populations of people who are sort of caught up in the system in all these three different areas?
I would say,
No, go ahead, Ines.
yeah, I would say, as I said, advocates. This is what CASA does. Advocate for them. Talk to your lawmakers. Let them know that these people are present, and at the same time, be there for those people. You know, I come from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I came to a country, I didn't have my parents. It was just me and my siblings. And I was like 19 years old, and I had to adapt to the system with a new language right up off of high school. So it's welcome those people. Show them that we will not treat you like where you just came from. We will show you that you do matter and there is a future for you. And also advocate, talk to your lawmaker, and to you guys reporters, I think you guys have to give visibility to this story even more. Try to find where is the action happening. How can we elevate the voice of those immigrants and those people that are being marginalized for a reason or another, just because they don't have a status that is meeting the requirement of that specific area or what have you. So, Nkeshi, you wanted to add?
Well, how do I come behind that? I mean, what you just said is so amazing and powerful, and you articulated it way better than I could. I was simply just going to say, from the communications perspective, what we do from advocacy and organization is the advocate. You know, we have petitions, we have the website, we have rallies, we have the marches. And as Ines also said, you know, reaching out to the media, making sure that people are being intentional to look at the stories of people and not just headlines and not just sound bites, and actually acknowledging, like this, for example. This is an amazing platform giving us an opportunity to shine a new light and a new face on the immigration stories. And so for us, we are very happy to be here to uplift, amplify, and elevate our colleagues, our coworkers, our members. And so these are some of the things that can happen, is making sure we have these larger platforms to create these levels of awareness.
I wanted also to add that in the community, we empower our community, because we let them know that they are in a country, in this country, and they are in security. They have security here. They have people who loves them. They have people who can protect them in case of problem. So, when as an immigrant coming from a country with war and all problems, when we arrive, we don't know where to go. We don't know nobody, as Ines was saying. So sometimes we are afraid of everyone. So, and the work that CASA did by ensuring us that we are not alone, so that they would advocate for us, that make us becoming strong and be able to reconsider our life and know that we are a human being. Yes.
I echo everything my colleagues have said. The only other thing that I will add is vote. Vote, right? Because these policies that are put in place, these laws that are put in place, right? The administrations that are, quote, shipping people to other states, these are people who are voted into power and are misusing their power, right? As an average American, one of the most powerful tools available that immigrants do not have, mind you, right? Immigrants cannot vote in these elections. Americans can. So educate yourselves and vote so that we have people in these positions who are using their power for good and treating our community members in the humane way that we all should be treated, and not misusing their power in the way that we see continuously happening every single day.
I cannot argue with that. Thank you, Alma, for putting that so eloquently in terms of just something is, I hate to call it simple because it's really not simple anymore, but something as basic as voting, participating in the elections and using your rights as a citizen to make a statement that can be of a help to immigrant populations is something we don't really think a lot about. We will gladly share contact information for CASA along with this report so that those who want to inquire more about TPS or seek some support for their particular immigrant community or who just want to speak up will know how to find you. Can we talk about the fear associated with coming forward to get the help that they need? What is it that she would recommend to any immigrant, whether they are new to this country or have been here for years, to deal with the fear associated with coming forward?
Sí, creo que es importante realmente como inmigrantes llegados a este país, de repente tenemos el miedo de buscar esas ayudas. You know? Entonces CASA viene a ser un papel sumamente importante. Yo no sé si tú quieres que yo haga una pausa para que tú puedas reproducir lo que yo digo.
Amable, gracias. It's important as an immigrant who just arrived to this country to recognize that we're afraid, but CASA plays an important role in losing that fear.
Sí, ya que la organización CASA viene no precisamente a facilitar, pero nos da una gran ayuda y un gran alivio, ya que ellos se dedican a luchar por cada derecho de un inmigrante indocumentado.
The organization CASA doesn't come as a facilitator, but comes as an aid because the organization works with people so that people fight for each right they deserve.
Es importante seguir luchando por nuestros beneficios, ya que todo ser humano tiene derecho a una buena vivienda, a un buen trabajo. Entonces, no me voy a cansar de repetir que CASA, la organización CASA, ¿cómo le explico? En este país, la organización CASA es como una organización que lucha por crear una sociedad justa para todos nosotros como inmigrantes. Y pienso que esto fue lo que más me atrajo de esta organización. Y igual estamos aquí siempre luchando al presidente Biden, que nosotros estamos, que existimos y que nosotros le aportamos mucho a este país.
It's important to keep fighting for our rights because every person deserves access to safety, to work, to dignity. And in this country, CASA is an organization that fights for that just community, for everyone, including the immigrant community. That's what attracted me most to the CASA. That's what attracted me most to this fight, to staying in the struggle. And that's what we asked for President Biden to do, to recognize that.
I wanted to point out that Yandili is also part of the Ngoueko community, which is a community of African descendants in Latin American countries, and to let her talk a little bit about her community, the heritage, and why it's important to protect them through this status.
Nosotros somos una comunidad garífuna. De repente algunas personas no lo saben, quedan sorprendidos cuando digo que soy garífuna de Honduras, porque realmente algunas personas no manejan que hay garífunas negros en Honduras descendientes de África, porque somos una cultura que viene que somos descendientes de África. Vivimos en Honduras, estamos en las costas de los países centroamericanos, ya que no solo en Honduras hay, también están en Nicaragua, están en Belice, están en Panamá, en Nicaragua, bueno, en todos los países centroamericanos. Voy a hablar un poco de mi cultura, ya que yo soy de Honduras, ¿verdad? Vivimos en las costas, como le había dicho. Somos un grupo muy unido. También nos ha afectado, hemos emigrado bastante por la razón de que nosotros realmente, ¿cómo le explico? Nosotros nos dedicamos a lo que es la pesca, la agricultura, Entonces, con tantos huracanes que han pasado por nuestra comunidad, pues se han perdido prácticamente lo que son los siembros, ya no se da como antes, y por esa razón nosotros también hemos emigrado a este país, ¿verdad? Hemos emigrado a este país para tratar de rescatar lo nuestro. Y todavía mantenemos nuestras costumbres, nuestras comidas, nuestro lenguaje, pues todo lo tenemos gracias a Dios.
We as a Garifuna community, when I share that we're a Garifuna community, some people are surprised because they don't have their minds open that there could be Black people in Honduras, Afro-descendants from Africa in Honduras. Garifuna as a community, we live on the coast of Honduras, of Nicaragua. There's other Afro-descendant communities in Nicaragua, in Panama, in Belize. But I'll talk about my culture as someone from Honduras. Like I said, we live on the coast and we're a very united, tight-knit group. We've lived through a lot of migration because we're dedicated to fishing, to agriculture, to nature. But so many hurricanes have passed through that our communities are destroyed. The crops don't come as they used to. We've tried to rescue our culture so that we keep our way of living alive, our language going, and the way that we prepare our dishes pass through our generation.
Well, thank you so much for that, Yandele. And also, Ines and Marie and Nkeshi, thank you so much for coming to speak with us about this really, really urgent and pressing matter. And hopefully, by taking these sisters off mute, we can take the rest of the Black immigrant population off mute on this matter that is as important to them as it is to the rest of us.